example, somebody has strong sense of anger or fear or something. Huh? So then at the basic level, you can do some kind of searching to see, what is constantly causing this fear, what is constantly causing this anger and all that. Like people say sometimes, trauma and all that. Huh? But that is not deep really the yogic or the spiritual way, as at the real rate. The spiritual way is to understand that this misconception due to with ajnana, due to which that vasanas are also manifesting. So if you look at that kleshas also, the Yoga Sutra will say, they say the five kleshas are there. But then they will say all that are four kleshas are rooted in avidya as the main klesha. So that avidya is that fundamental klesha, if you want to say, or that basis. So if we are able to directly address avidya, then what happens automatically, you will not go and grasp at this vasanas. See, this is what I was trying to explain again. When the base here is ajnana, like you are in a dark room, and in that dark room you cannot see anything. So then what happens? You hold on to, let us say, like some pillar or something that looks like a pillar, and you think that this is a pillar, or this is a uh, uh, something because you're familiar with, you're grasping onto it, but you really don't know what it is. So there is this famous story of the one who later on became Tulsidas. He wants to go meet his wife desperately, in a strong craving. So he's trying to climb that a a one floor up. She's on the building which is on one floor up. So he's not even ready to wait for the door to open. He just wants to go see her. So that strong sense of klesha, that craving is there. So he grasps at something and he thinks it's a rope. And he takes that rope and he goes up. And then when the light switches on, he looks back and his wife looks back and they see it's a snake. So usually we talk the other way around, we mistake so even that mistaking that snake for a rope is not a good thing. So here what has happened, that klesha makes him grasp at something. So that is what we're saying. Ajnana is what? The darkness. In the darkness you are grasping at something, and that is what grasping is, what? Vasanas. So that vasanas manifest because of ajnana. So this is where, the Shastras are trying to address the root. They say, yeah, you can do practices, see all that we do, yoga, pranayama, dhyana, and all that. These are all way to keep that vasanas somewhat controlled so that you can continue with that deeper gaining of wisdom. But when that ultimate goal is what? That when that ajnana is uprooted, then these vasanas will all disappear. They will not be there at all. So this is why, that this is why if you look at all the, especially the Indian darshanas, they have lot of disagreements in the different points. But the base of all of them is uprooting ajnana. So one thing if they agree on is that we have to uproot avidya or ajnana. So this we have already looked at, but basically it was mentioned. So jnanena tu tad ajnanam, that esham nashitam atmanaha, those whose ignorance is destroyed by knowledge. What happens then? It is like that sun, tesham adityavat jnanam. That sun reveals, that sun is coming, and the prakashayati tatparam. What does that knowledge, that sun of knowledge do? It will reveal that supreme. Not that the Atma requires light, because Atma itself is Swayam Prakasha. But what happens is that knowledge helps us to recognize that Atma again. Hmm? So this is where we are saying, like I was giving that example. Now, in the dark, you are grasping at something and thinking it's a pillar. Maybe it is not a pillar. Maybe it is something else. So when that light comes, what happens? That light will help you to recognize what is reality, and that recognition of that reality. So this is one of the important constant practices we have to keep doing. One is recognition, constant recognition of that Atma Tattva, that pointing backward. So once we have an understanding that, I'm not the body, I'm not the mind, this world is an appearance and all that, right? Then the understanding is the sense of knowership, or the sense of sakshi, we say, that witness or that knower, repeated recognition. And this is where the Shastras and the Gurus and all are pointing us towards. They help us to in this process of repeated recognition of that truth. And what is that doing? That is how the knowledge is casting that light. So what do you do? How do you go about that? So then he gives this 4 steps here. That 4 steps of practice, or the 4 pillars, you can say. Tad buddhi, the intellect has to be absorbed in that truth. Tad buddhaya. Then that what is the how do we get that intellect to be absorbed in that? So here the practice is Shravana Manana Nididhyasana, listening to the scriptures, that these kind of higher sacred teachings, we keep listening, and then we contemplate on that, we think about that, we introspect about that, and we meditate upon that. Tad buddhaya, tadatmana. So we discussed this last time, that ability to, when we talk about how, what happens to that ego with that knowledge, right? So that ego, in that sense, we can say from one sense that the ego is actually disappearing. This is a one way to say that what happened to that ego upon realization, that ego disappeared. But the real, another deeper way to understand this is that that ego has become that self, or it merges into that self. See that all of this, what we were perceiving in the first place, was that Atma only, but that Atma confined itself with that upadhi, or with that limitation, and then it thought it was the self. That is what we call that ego. So there is no, that fundamentally, that ego and Atma, there is no difference. The only difference is that that ego has ajnana. It is caught up with that wrong misconception. So that ego itself, then what happens? It reestablishes, or tadatmana, he says, right? Tad, that ego, here Atma means that ego. So that ego establishing that tat. That tat is that supreme. And when it realizes that, it realizes it is not just an individual, it is that one consciousness, that Brahman. There is no difference between that Atma and Brahman there. That one consciousness, it has. So it is like saying, that wave, what was the wave? So we say that the wave is actually different from that ocean, but how long does it remain different, right? It goes and merges back into that ocean. So then when we say it merges back to that ocean, what would we say? Will we say that wave is somewhere in that ocean, it is hiding in that ocean? No, the wave has become that ocean. There is no difference. Can you then take away that specific wave and say, this wave, I got it back, I rescued this wave back? Cannot, because it is then identified with that ocean. There's also another example given, like a salt doll. This is a famous example given by, I think, many Mahatmas, but Ramakrishna Paramahamsa says that. He says a salt doll wanted to understand the ocean. Uh, the salt doll decided that, I want to discover or understand the reality of that ocean. So it is like saying, that individual who tries to understand Bhagavan or that Supreme Lord, and it goes into that ocean. So what has happened to that salt doll now? So that salt doll now has become one with that ocean, right? So you cannot now get back that salt doll. But is it gone? It has disappeared? No, it isn't. We can't really say it is disappeared. It has become one. It is that. So similarly here, tadatmana. Of course, in some deeper Vedantic teachings, we say that. There was nothing ever there, that ego was not even there, and so it has disappeared from that context, so that is why sometimes we use that, but here in this context it is tadatmana, it is that oneness, it has become that atma itself, that ego has become tannishtha. This is a very important kind of a thing. What is tannishtha? We can be karmanishta, we can be japanishta, we can be taponishta. So these are all different. That will not necessarily remove ajnana. They may help us with the chitta shuddhi. Hmm. The real nishtha, tannishtha, is that when that atma or that ego or the buddhi abides constantly in truth, in that reality. Uh, So that constant contemplation on that truth, on that reality, like we say sometimes, right? Constantly thinking of Bhagavan. But here, constantly thinking of Bhagavan as that supreme truth, as your own Rupa, as your own Swarupa. So this constant thing, Nishtha. So Jnana Nishtha or Atma Nishtha, we say. So this is the sometimes we are not able to do directly jnana nishta all the time, because our intellect can also not be prepared. So there what happens, then we use this thing of using other means of practices. We do japa, we do karma yoga, bhakti yoga and all that, but without losing that vision of that supreme. See, when you have that vision of that supreme, then you do other practices, they will all align for us and it will take us to that vision. But if we do other practices for other purposes, like if I work for 20 hours and then I do for to become a businessman, then that goal will take me there to become a businessman. I may become a successful businessman. But if I work for Bhagwan, that whatever 15 hours or whatever, and in that working for Bhagavan constantly, I am offering that results, offering my thoughts and my doership, everything, and maintain that knowledge and gain that knowledge as much as possible. Then what happens? All that efforts of our karma will align for us to go on the path of jnana. So this is where, the realization, it will take us towards realization. But here, Tanishta is very specifically for wisdom, Jnana Nishta. Why? Because the next one he says, Tatparayanaha, that goal, that supreme goal, that clear clarity on what is the goal I'm seeking, what is the vision. Parayana is that vision, that goal. That we are attaining, we want to attain. So that goal is, if we are just wanting to get some siddhi, then that siddhi will come and go for a while. Or if we want just to be in that state of, sometimes we do meditations and all, right? We want to experience peace, we want to be quiet, at least for 1 hour I'll be quiet. So that is good, that helps, but at the same time, that vision has to be there. When you have that vision and then you do your meditation, when you have the vision of that supreme truth, then you do that meditation, then that effect of that meditation is to enable us to contemplate on that truth. So that's why those of you who come for manana, we do about 10 minutes of some meditation, some practice, and then we use that quiet mind to focus on that supreme truth. So then that meditation has helped us to direct that attention It will be a much sharper focus of that attention and that intellect. So all this again go together. These 4 points he mentions here. That absorption of that intellect in that supreme, that abiding in that nishtha of that, uh, um, and that identification of that ego in that atma, that merging that ego in that self, and that vision, that goal, that supreme goal. What happens then? Gachantya punaravrittim. That person attains that state of non-returning. Hmm? So this is what we say, when that, as somebody was asking, right? That what happens when that ignorance goes? When that ignorance goes, all the vasanas are gone, and all that karma is also gone. So this karma philosophy, which most darshanas use, for explaining different things. So there, what is it that why am I born like this? Why do I have this position? Why am I this? It is, we say, it is your stock of karma which brought you here. Because of that, you're born in such a place, such a parent, such a environment, and you have such and such privileges only. Others have such and such privileges. So these are all the explanations for the law of karma. But that karma will only have effect when there is a person who is identified as a jiva. If there is no jiva, then that karma has no place to land on. The that one who is identified with that supreme, in that buddhi of that one, even though if he's alive, the karma cannot take any root. So in other words, he may continue this life with the prarabdha karma, even though that realization is there, but he's not na punaravritti, apunaravritti. There is no returning, there's non-returning. Meaning that ignorance is gone forever. See, everything else in the world has a state of returning. You may become very rich, and before that you were very poor. You are staying in some small house or something, and then you get a mansion. But then what happens? You may lose everything. You may again come back to that thing. So all worldly things are like that. Everything you get, it is all temporary. It will come back. Similarly, anything that we get in our sadhana phala also, it can take us to higher lokas. Like when we do a lot of sadhana, when we get a lot of punya, or when we have good vasanas, it can take us to higher lokas. So we can go all the way, they say, to Brahma Loka. But of course, Brahma Loka is a little unique. But most lokas we go to, there can be returning. There's a lot of stories in the Purana, like very high sages, high sadhus, somewhere in the Swarga Loka, they will get cursed and then they will come back. Similarly, for us, many lokas we can be there or any places, but we will come back. But if we are nishtha, if we have realized the truth, if jnana has destroyed that ajnana, then there is no returning. There is no returning because their sins and their vasana, that is what is jnana nirdhuta kalmashaha. So that kalmasha means that impurities. That's what causes impurities. So at the metaphysical level, we say karma. At the psychological level or the subtle level, we say vasanas, or the kleshas. So these are the impurities that cause bondage for us. Now he talks about this point where he says, how do we get, what happens when that vidya comes, when that realization comes, what happens? Vidya Vinaya Sampanne. Now he gives two qualifications of that person. He doesn't say that person has just knowledge. That person who has knowledge and humility. That person who has that, not that pride, because pride again is klesha. Klesha means that person doesn't have proper knowledge. So Vidya Vinaya Sampanne, what does that person do? He has what is called as Samadarshinaha. He has equal vision. He has a equanimous vision. What is that equanimous vision? Brahmane Gavihastini. There is a Brahmana. Brahmana is considered the a very in the classes of people, is a traditionally in Vedic thing is considered as a pure person, as a person who is dedicated his life to. So it doesn't, in according to Gita, it is not just by birth. Brahmana is somebody who has that qualification of seeking wisdom, seeking reality, and he follows, even if he's a householder, he follows the rules of the Shastras, Brahmana. Then such a person who needs to be respected. Gavi is a cow. A cow, especially in India, at least in some communities, they respect the cow. Hastini, the Hastini is an elephant. And then there is Shuni. Shuni means a dog. So dogs, sometimes, of course, some people love dogs, but sometimes people will also throw stones at dogs, right? Shuni Chaiva. Shwapaka. So the dogs is mentioned to mention that there is a person who eats dogs, meaning there are people who eat the dog meat. So they are considered as Chandala, meaning the lowest class of people. So they are the ones, especially in India, sometimes the lowest community people we call Shwapaka. Cha Panditaha. The that realized learned person, somebody who has that no, the Panditaha Samadarshinaha. That Pandita or that person with that learning, that knowledge, what does he do? He has the same vision towards everything. Now, here we have to be careful. This is where Shankaracharya says. When we talk about this, we are talking about the equalness of the Atma Tattva in everyone. Hmm? So that Atma Tattva, that pure nature of Atma, that is never compromised just because the person has bad habits, bad attitude, or bad samskaras. That doesn't get compromised. But it doesn't mean that we have to treat everyone at that same level, especially when the wisdom is there. It is not like, the person is treating everyone. In other words, let us say his guru comes or some Mahatma comes. And then there is a worldly person or somebody who is a very, non-caring of any spiritual values and all. Such a person comes. Then do we say, okay, these people are all equal. So this person, as I treat him, I will treat them also. Or other example given there is that in the Bhashya. Let us say that a learned person is coming. And then a dog is coming. So you will say, yeah, but to give same treatment to the dog, same treatment to the learning person. So you will not kind of, treat that learned person like a dog, nor can you treat that dog like a learned person, right? So this kind of vyavahara treatment can differ based on what they deserve. Similarly, like, see, we are talking here, we are seeing Atma Tattva in everybody. A businessman, a shopkeeper, what does he see in all customers? He sees only financial value. He sees the money in everybody. So every customer for him, he sees that money value in them. Huh? Now, a person who is a regular customer and buys a lot of things, this person will treat little specially because he gives him repeated business. And another person who doesn't buy anything, he just comes and goes, he may or may not buy. That person, you will not give him too much attention. Similarly, that kind of a vyavahara difference in a jnani, especially if it is given through the means of understanding of shastras. So that is okay. There is no harm in that. But inwardly, we should not have this ragadvesha. That is the idea. In our mind, we should not consider that somebody is inherently bad or somebody is inherently less deserving of anything. So here, when we talk about the equal status, it is that equal potential in everybody. So otherwise, what happens? Like, a criminal will come, then we cannot, uh, you know, give him that we have to be careful, right? Like somebody, if is going to rob you, you have to be careful in your behavior with such a person. So this kind of a vyavahara based treatment that is accepted, but the atma tattva, an inward vision, an inward attitude in our mind towards everybody, that should not be compromised. So that in that perspective, in that perspective of our vision is where there is no caste system, there is no religious values, there is no different nationalities, different state, different thing. In that vision, in that potential of a person to realize that truth. But in the Vyavahara purposes, in that transactional thing, Shastras has different teachings, different vidhis, different things. Like if you're a household varnashrama, a sannyasa has a different rules. A grihastha will have different rules. A brahman will have a different rules. So that is because they are at that level of vyavahara, they have to follow different systems. But in that vision of them, in that potential of who they are, there cannot be discrimination. That is the that bhashya, that teachings in the which the Shankaracharyas clarifies that. So that in that sense, what happens? We are admitting that every person has samskara, and that samskara has affected their mind or their intellect. So that vasana samskaras are there in that mind. So they, according to their vasana samskaras, we have to be watchful in the vyavahara. But in that atma tattva, nothing has ever got impure, and they and me are not different. That is what a saint is seeing in everyone, that potential, that atma tattva. But that guru also, we have to, sometimes we say that, right? The guru also will sometimes give a different treatment or different things to different students, based on where or how they are ready for that truth. Just like how a parent, has two, three children. They love both the children, but one may be requiring discipline, another may require encouragement. So accordingly, so that is the samadarshinaha.